Streamcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Streamcast. I'm Akupara, and to my left you can see Tom and C.B. of Akupara Games. Welcome. How are you both doing?
Yeah, we're doing all right. It's we're coming to the end of development, so it's like we're in probably, really in the toughest part of development. But it's also like the most exciting part because you're really starting to see like everything starting to come together, everything starting to look better, and people are getting excited about it. So yeah, it's like an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it's been good to see people's reactions as we've been able to share more of the game recently. But yeah, a lot of long days at the moment.
But you're in the end game now. Your game's just around the corner, and we want to get into that. But first and foremost, I want to get into you both. So tell me a little bit about yourselves, about who you are, what you do in the games industry, and your interests.
Okay. So yeah, I'm CB. I am for our company, Akupara Games. I kind of do like all the visual stuff, and like the core of the writing. So
I think we should elaborate on visual.
Yeah.
You do the 2D art, 3D art, animation, everything you see in the game, Christine has created.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of like stock animations that I had to rely on, but the vast majority of them in there, you'll be able to tell. I enjoy doing it though, and so I've also been kind of like the narrative designer for Sorry We're Closed. So the story is kind of my creation, Tom, and I've had a few other people help with sort of the editing, like they read it and tell me if it makes sense or not. And Tom has made some contributions themselves to some characters.
Yeah, there are a few bits of Tom dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're excellent. They're really good. And just I had to leave it in just because it's just like that playful and joyful. So but yeah, so I do like the narrative design stuff as well. And me and Tom both kind of like share level design and game design together. And then I guess from that you can then say the other stuff.
Tom, I am a background was in web development, but we kind of veered into games during the pandemic. We were sat at home a lot, and I got a character moving around. I was doing some tutorials online, made this little box character. Christine saw that and said, well,
it wasn't just a box character though. Like he made this like little 3D guy, and then to texture it he had like a photo of our friend, but like it was just like a photo of him standing sideways, so like it just looked like really freaky, and he's like running up to the camera, like he looks just like the zombie dude running up to the camera, and I was like, never make a 3D model again, Tom.
So then you open up Blender for the first time and make what ends up being the protagonist for Sorry We're Closed. So that was your first model you ever made.
Yeah. It was the first humanoid model I made, and it worked out, so that's fine. But what you tell us?
So I work on the programming for the game. So Christine is everything you can see, I do everything you can't see. I would put it like that.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Tom, it would basically be like a glorified Blender animation, and that's it. It wouldn't work as a game. So yeah, there's so much stuff that goes behind actually making something work as a game, and it's like, it's not just the parameters of how does it play, but it's like every time someone plays and tests it, it's like, well, how does it feel? How do we tweak that? How do we advance that? And that's...
I think we enjoy that process. We have an idea of how something will work, and then we get to test it with someone, and we can see where we've our failures and our successes, and then we can go back and tweak it and hopefully make it more enjoyable for people.
Yeah, so that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I mean, got all the components that you really need to make a game in there, with all the visuals, all the actual programming, the mechanics. So yeah, I'd love to get into you a bit more and ask you a question that I ask all of my guests because I love hearing the answers. What was your first ever game and console?
So, oh gosh, that's really difficult because my mom was like buying and playing games before I was like born, like she grew up with the Atari. So the earliest one I can remember would probably be just, the initial Nintendo, like the first one. That's the one I can like remember being the youngest and playing that and playing things like Tetris and Pac-Man and Mario with my mom. But if it were to be like my personal choice, like my system, my one. Okay, this is more complicated now because technically it would have been the Sega Genesis, because I remember waking up and my grandma had bought that for me. But if I were to really consider, I think the Dreamcast is the one that really was like, it was in my room. I was playing that one on, like, I was the one who was obsessed with all the Dreamcast games. And I mean, I loved PlayStation and stuff as well, but that's the one where, I started playing Phantasy Star Online. I was playing Space Channel 5. I was playing Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Sonic Adventure. All of those were like, I was in it. I was really in it then. But what about you, Tom? What was your...
Oh, first console would be the Game Boy. My aunt had one, so she had Tetris and like Mario Land, and then I begged and begged and begged for ages. Can we get a Game Boy? Can we get a Game Boy? And there was a little pack with the old brick style Game Boy, yellow Game Boy with Mario Land 1 and 2. And then quite soon after that, I got Zelda Link's Awakening, and that would, I think, be the
catalyst.
That was the one. Yeah. I think that damaged me as a child. The ending of that. I'm like in this happy town, saving all the people, and then doing all the quests, and at the end, the island evaporates. I was like, no, they show you like all the characters one by one, like disappearing and fading out.
That's kind of traumatic,
But I loved the game. Yeah. Took me a long time to beat it. Yeah, months and months and months, maybe years.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I think it's really... games were definitely a huge impact on my life, because it was like, as a kid, it's like getting an interactive story. And I think, it was telling the kinds of stories, that were... I think when you're a very young child and you're playing things like Final Fantasy, it feels like a very adult story. It feels like it's a little bit more like, you're getting the taste of something that's like a little bit beyond what you got, at school. Mm-hmm. And I think I just got obsessed with sort of the worlds and the characters, and would kind of believe that, that'll be my life one day. I'll be saving the world. I'm going to be the protagonist.
I was thinking, so for a home console, after another round of begging, we got a N64 from
okay.
It used to be a store called Woolworths in the UK, so we got it from Woolworths.
I remember.
The pack-in with GoldenEye and the Star Wars pod racing game, because I think Phantom Menace come out, and I was like, pod racing like that. And then it was different then, because nowadays there are so many games, and I spend, it feels, such little time with them. But when I was a kid, I would come back, like I would play GoldenEye over and over and over again. I must have played the levels,
but
hundreds
also,
of times.
It is a little bit different because games were quite expensive back then too. So it's like you couldn't get like every game.
But I was happy doing it. I wasn't feeling like, oh, I need more games. I just come back and, okay, I'm going to play the train level on GoldenEye today. I like that one. And,
I mean,
a lot of curiosity, I think, about if I can get over that fence, is there more there? I didn't really understand that the limits were there because nothing existed
outside
beyond those things. I had a lot of curiosity as a child with the early 3D games.
I like both of those answers just because Dreamcast was my first console as well. So when you were listing off the games, I was like, oh, Crazy Taxi. I hope they remade that game. Sonic Adventure, yes, that was arguably my first, maybe my second game. So like a lot of those games you mentioned, really brought back happy memories, and just seeing the success of Link's Awakening coming back, because you can see why The Legend of Zelda has been such a powerhouse in terms of gaming, and it's just dominated and it's got a real market share in a lot of people's minds who are of a similar age group. Also, I feel like back then when we were younger, we'd be happy with less as long as we had fun with it. So either there are maybe 3 games I can remember playing a lot on the Dreamcast and the PS2, whereas now, as you quite rightly alluded to, there's not that much free time that we have, and so many games. There's so much competition. So you know, a lot of us end up, you know, putting a disc in and we play it once and once only, and games don't really have that connection with us anymore, as opposed to, you know, your Jet Set radios and your what was it, your Pokemon games. So yeah, it's a real different dynamic now. So from your first ever game, let's go to the best of the best. What are your 5 favorite games?
That's hard.
We know what number 1 is.
Well, well, it's okay. What's your number 1? Because if it can't, because I don't want to do this thing where I would be like, yeah, the number 1 game is this, and you'll be like, no, it's meant to be this. You know that thing that couples do when they're like got the completely wrong idea about the other one.
I'm pretty confident.
Okay, what
Y'all don't have whiteboards?
yeah.
Do you remember where we met?
I know. Okay, all right. So we're on the same page. So Phantasy Star Online is going to be, you know, the one. That is where we met. We actually met playing. So okay, for me, I played Phantasy Star Online on the Dreamcast when I was little, like 11 years old, and it was an incredible experience. It's the first game where it was like, oh, I can make a brown character, and I can change their height, and I can like make them skinny or fat, or, you know, it wasn't perfect, but it existed, and it was like, wow, that's really cool. And then, you know, I was like talking to people around the world, and that just blew my mind as a child in the 2000s, right? Then like fast forward some years, I was like kind of hankering for it, and my brother was like, oh, it's on PC now, you can, you know, they have like a version of it on PC. So I started playing it, and then I met Tom, and
yeah, I didn't think I was going to enjoy PSO. Like, I like the style of it. My friend had it on GameCube, and he was like, you should get PSO, you should get PSO. So I got it, and I'm like, I'm bored. Like, I'm just going around these levels like over and over again, trying to level up. And so I like stopped playing it, didn't get very far. Then there was the Blue Burst on PC, because I hadn't played it online on GameCube. Online, completely different. You can play with people, far more interesting.
The main thing everyone did, it was basically a glorified chat room.
It was MSN. It was 3D MSN. Just people would sit down in the lobbies in their little like photon chairs.
Yeah.
And you could chat. Like, I'd be doing my homework, and PSO would be up in like a little window on the side, just like MSN Messenger.
Yeah. And so that's number 1, I think.
For both of you,
yeah, because like it was just so transformative. Like for me, you know, being like all into like sci-fi and stuff as well, you know, one of my favorite films when I was growing up, and still is kind of today, is Fifth Element. You know, and PSO was basically like that, but video game for me. And the whole aspect of like being able to sort of talk to people from all around the world, and like just kind of, I don't know, learn more about the world through that. It just gave me such a thrill that I don't think I've ever had like topped, you know, ever playing like another online game. And yeah, it just has like this sort of look, this feeling, you know, the music starts up. Yeah, you like turn it on, and it does like this little chimey thing that makes you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to be like exploring a great adventure. Like you were hyped the second the first note hits. And yeah, it's just, for me,
certainly the longest I've played any game. I think like thousands of hours across the save files. Like, I think I was at school like calculating, and I was like, I've spent literal like months 24/7 on this, if you add up all the hours for it.
Yeah, it was like, I think we were clocking at like almost 2,000 hours. But you have to remember, this is like, this became our chat room essentially.
Yeah, we were like, what, 16, 17?
Yeah. So it was just like, it would just be on, you go on. It also even had like a messaging system. Like when you got online, you could check which of your friends were online and send them.
You had to check one by one though. So like, it's like doing like this, like going through like the up and down, like the check button. and then you see if there's like a little light to see if the person's online. But I would sign on, then like check each
friend
to
individually,
see if the people are online.
And then you send them a little message. And it was so exciting when you got a message to it, come up with a little mail sign and make a little noise. And you're like, oh, what's about me? So yeah, PSO's at the top. For me, the second game would be Grandia, which is, you know, it's removed from what Sario Close is like. It's an RPG. It's like, oh gosh, I don't know how to describe it. during the time of like the late 90s and like early 2000s, there was just like a kind of era of what I call, it's like Japanese fantasy art of the West, right? And it's like,
Okay.
yeah, like their kind of interpretation of like Western kind of aesthetics and knights and things like that. And Grandia, again, it was just one of these things where it's like you start the game and you already know you're going into like the biggest adventure of your life. And in this game, you play as a young boy named Justin, and essentially it's like his coming of age story. Like he's traveling the world, even though he like starts off at 13, right? And just the characters in that are lovely and wonderful. And I think it was like one of the very few games to make me cry, which brings me on to my third game, which is Shadow of Colossus. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about when you cry, when you're like about to do the final boss and the horse is running and like you jump and you can't make it. So the horse throws you off of its back to make it. And the horse like sacrifice. I was like this, I couldn't. Good game though. I love Shadow of the Colossus. It's probably to me, one of the most powerful like narrative games without having like loads of story and characters like directly speaking the exposition. Just beautifully told with environmental storytelling, and just like little bits and glimpses of this boy you're playing and his life and what his goal is. So yeah, that's number 3. I'll let you do a couple now while I try and pick the last 2.
It's hard to pick in order, but there are definitely things that stand out. I would say Half-Life 2. I didn't like have a hype for it. I didn't really know about Half-Life until very close to when 2 came out. And I don't know, it was that mixture of like physics and interactions with things, the storytelling, being able to download mods for it and seeing what people had made inside it. And some of the expansions, they had like a developer mode. And this is my curiosity before, I was like, what's behind the curtain? They show you, okay, there's this guy talking on a video screen. He doesn't have any legs because we don't show that on screen, and that saves performance. It's like all these little tricks they used. Oh, you're on a train, and then the train doesn't actually move, but we have just some lights moving outside it, so it looks like it's moving. So that really got me curious about how, I guess, games went together. But the play of it as well. I had a good time playing Half-Life 2, and that was another one where I'd play over and over again. Ocarina of Time, that was one of my first 3D games. And again, it's, I don't know, the curiosity, what is around the corner, as well as enjoying the story and the environments. And I found that game quite scary. It's bright and colorful, but like things like Under the Well, very scary for me as a child.
It was a bit creepy. I think especially, when you go through the Temple of Time and you come out and there's those like screaming dudes.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like running it. Every time it turned dark, I'd be doing like the sun song. I was
Oh, the readouts were scary. Yeah. That tomb where
I
you
wasn't
learn the
hanging
sun
around
song.
for that. I wasn't hanging around.
But I like the freedom, like you can pick up the cuckoo and like fly a bit with it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
like
a lot to discover in it.
Yeah, it felt like there weren't many restrictions.
Yeah.
Then
I think for me, another one would be Jet Set Radio. Well, in the States, it was called Jet Grind Radio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it had a different name out there. Yeah, so like for me, it made sense because it was like, they were grinding because they had the skates, and then I was like, but what does the set mean? When they say set? But no, that one again, super transformative, and again, the game was so like kind of on the pulse of style. Like it came out and it was on trend basically, and as a kid in literally like the year 2000, you could imagine. For me, it just had that thing of what I wanted to be when I grew up. I like saw these characters and I'm like, I'm going to be that one. I'm going to like, my whole personality is going to be based off of this particular like aesthetic and character, as you do as a kid. And the music was just incredible. It was a little bit awkward to play, but like, because I was so obsessed with it, I think this is another thing that I think you do as a kid. You kind of forgive a little bit more. Like you just adapt to what the play style is, just because you're like, I want to see more. I don't care how hard it is. I'm just going to get good at it so I can do the rest of the game. And so Jet Set Radio is another one that's up there. Oh, and if I had one last one to pick, okay, you do another one, Tom, because like I can't.
That's very smart.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I'm thinking like Desert Island Disc, like, oh, if you're stranded.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of GameCube stuff I'm nostalgic for. Sonic Adventure 2 I got with the GameCube. That was one of my first Sonic games because I hadn't played Adventure 1. Chow Garden, spent a lot of time there.
Great show.
House, yeah. I know, it's like, I think you were saying before people having more patience as a kid, but it's, I think, not being exposed to maybe preconceived ideas about them and being able to find joy in something without something like, oh, this game's a 7 out of 10. And it's like, oh, it's just a game I played when I was a kid and I enjoyed it and had fun with it. Yeah, there are certainly elements in it that are clunky, but I have a lot of good memories from it. I'm sure I could pick it up now and have a good time playing it again.
Yeah, we've been buying old games, like, that's what we're going to be playing after Star Wars closes out. I guess my last one, it's really hard to try and pick another one, but I think for me the last one's going to be Bayonetta, because it's just so much fun. And like, to me, she's such like an icon. I know there's controversy around her, but Bayonetta is like the type of woman where like, oh man, I wish I could walk down the street like that and like just like, literally be like, get out of my way. I want to be her, basically. And it was just, I loved the enemy design. It was such a flashy and over the top game that, I don't know, I was just like completely pulled in. So that's another one that's up there. There's too many to pick though.
Yeah, there are.
Man, thinking of Oblivion. That was another one I had.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, so again, I'm there at launch. It's there's this funny period like where the game's just like coming out in a few weeks and I see it for the first time and I'm like, okay, I haven't played something like this before. Can my computer run it? Not sure. Turn all the settings down. It looks very all the lights and things are off. But I had a good time going around. Again, I think the physics got me with a lot of these things because I hadn't experienced that much in games before. And the goblin ragdolls and rolls down the hill awkwardly. You can take the arrows out of it. Remembering lots of glitches and things from it. There was something you could do where you could like hold a button and it would spawn the number of objects equal to the number of arrows you had equipped. So you could like fire like hundreds of cheese wheels down the hill, and with all the physics they would all be bouncing down, going all these different ways. There was another glitch I had with a brick, and like you could pick it up and put it down, and you could then get on top of it. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can climb to the top of the tower in the middle. So I'm like putting the brick down, picking it up, putting the brick down, doing a little jump, going up and up and up and up and up. And of course, there's nothing there because it's not.
They're not expecting.
It wasn't designed, yeah. It wasn't designed for that.
It took me a long time to learn this. But
yeah, that's
the side stories I really enjoyed in Oblivion.
Yeah.
Didn't really play much of the main quest.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up the sort of like the fusion of things that we like.
Yeah, like with the 5 games that you mentioned, I can kind of get a little bit of a theme as to what it is that pulls you into gaming. So like the CB, you mentioned a lot of like the story elements of the games, like the horse throwing you up on Shadow of the Colossus, and with Tom, I feel like a lot of the mechanics of the games are what gets your brain going, and like being able to like test the limits and go, oh, what is outside of the screen, So it really does make a little bit of sense and paints a picture as to who you two are outside of gaming, in gaming, and how you two, merge together so well.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment, and I think that's actually that's really apparent in Sorry We're Closed. Like when we've had our friends play testing it, there are some things where they could see and they're like, CB did this part, like this is CB's writing, this is CB doing like a cut scene here. It's all like melodramatic and everything, and people are like confessing their love and all this. And then like when there's like a part where they're playing and there's like a mechanic driven thing, and it's kind of it's got like a goofy element to it as well. They're like, this is Tom. And like sometimes even with the dialogue, like that's how we got the phrase Tom dialogue, because like people will be playing and they'll be like, that's Tom dialogue. I know it is. That's Tom dialogue. But the thing is like I think it's what keeps the game feeling kind of fresh for people. Like it's not more the same throughout the whole game. We try to change it, and I think having kind of our alternative styles and desires is just what made Sorry We're Closed like this bombastic thing that people see. So it's the combination of like, okay, aesthetically it's got my influences of Jet Set Radio and kind of almost No More Hero style looking characters. But I also liked things like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and yeah, all of that's in there. But when you actually get to playing it, there's just like this whole other aspect of it where it's like I was not expecting Zelda style puzzles, in the game. So yeah, I think I really hope people can kind of enjoy it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's certainly not traditional survival horror the whole way through. We have I hope we can surprise people with some of the mechanics as it goes on. There's a lot of dialogue in the game too. The big focus of the game is the story, and people have played the demo. You get a taste of that at the beginning, but after each kind of horror level, you're back in town, and you can mingle as much as you like with the people and help or hinder in different relationships they have.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like a little bit of the kind of like almost like I would almost say in a sense kind of Zelda style pacing, where it's like, okay, you got a dungeon and then you got a town, and you can kind of you're kind of being pulled back and forth between the two of them. So yeah, that is how we are.
I think that's quite sweet, and a really big compliment when your friends can play the game and they're like, yeah, that's a CB or that's a Tom line. Like, I think that's a very good point of authenticity that you've put yourselves into this game.
Hey guys, I'm a meathead gamer, probably just like you. I understand the importance of playing Stellar Blade, but I also understand the importance of being in a squat rack. So I got the perfect programs for you. Hammerhead, Shogun, the Tenacity Strength Hypertrophy method, all of these designed to get you bigger, to get you stronger, and to be like one of these characters on Stellar Blade that don't look like one of these ugly ass monsters. So hit me up at Tenacity Strong and get a copy. It will do nothing but help you achieve your physical goals, and you'll get better at your gaming goals, because when you look good, you play good. All right, y'all have a good one.
So going into, you've listed all these great inspirations, all your favorite games. How does that happen that you make the transition from playing games to, I want to make this? Was there a light bulb moment? Was this something that you did through a course or anything? How did that happen?
Well, I think for me, it's that kind of very what's the word I'm looking for? The stereotypical thing of playing them as a kid. I was like, I want to make games one day, especially the art aspect of it. I wanted to be the character designer, and I wanted to make like these cool outfits, and at the time as a child, there was the whole thing of, and they're going to have a massive scythe, and they're going to have one demon wing and one angel wing. Then I got older and was like, that's really lame. And then I got a bit older and I was like, no, actually, I was onto something. Let me So yeah, I always wanted to. But I think what it I was gonna say, I think what at first kind of held me back a little bit was I didn't go to university and couldn't afford it. My mom was a single mother, had 5 kids, she was disabled. Like that, it was just too difficult for me to even think about going to university, especially in the States. It's so expensive. I stuck with doing art, and I ended up being like self-employed for a little while, and figured, well, I can at least do that. That's like kind of close. And I'd look at applying for jobs and stuff, but I didn't have that thing of being at university, so I just always wrote myself off. Eventually, my first intro into the games industry was actually being requested by a company to work for them. And I did do character design for them for I think I worked with them on and off for about 2 years as a contractor. and I enjoyed working with them. You know, I kind of enjoyed my time there. But when you're at a bigger company, there's like more restrictions on what you can do. Like if you know if you're given a job, like they expect you, like, okay, you just do that thing. You don't really spawn off into different
Yeah.
areas because that causes chaos. So I enjoyed it, but like I think there was that thing of I wanted something more, and then in the turn of events, the opportunity just kind of came up.
There are a couple of catalysts at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, during the pandemic, I was doing my tutorials, and then we had something kind of working. And I think that was like is it possible to do something? And around the same time, you had a request from the Paradise Killer developers. They reached out for CB to do some art for them. So the loading screens in Paradise Killer are actually CB's art.
Yeah, I've done some
Wow.
paintings for them. Yeah, yeah. It's not all of the loading screens. There's a few of them that are like some of the images they use elsewhere in the game. But the painted versions of the characters are my paintings. And I'm playing Paradise Killer, and
We were chatting to them as well, because they were
Yeah.
saying it's like mainly two of us that made this.
yeah,
And it's
and
around that same kind of summer 2020.
yeah, and like I finished the game, and like I'm looking at the credits, and I'm like, this is just basically like two people who made this game. And like, you know, Tom was doing the tutorials at the time, so of course there's like in my brain, I'm like, but what if I made my own game? And yeah, so basically what ended up happening was like, okay, so we're talking about doing it as just like a hobby thing, because you know we've got our other jobs, and we sit down at the table. We literally just sat at our like dining table, which is where we're sitting now, and just kind of just thought, okay, if we're going to make a game, what is it going to be like?
So this is like, by then it's like November 2020.
Yeah. And, you know, we kind of like try to focus on, well, what do we think we're good at? What do we think we can like pull off? And I was like, well, I've got some experience telling stories with my comics, so maybe we make it story driven. And I was like, you know, I do enjoy survival horror, and naively thought that, okay, so survival horror has a clunky nature to it, so maybe that will be more forgiving to make a survival horror game.
Then we started thinking about mechanics that we like. So like, well, you know, Resident Evil 4 plays the nicest out of these old ones. That was something we were both familiar with, because I hadn't played the old Resident Evils, but 4 I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
And we quite like the stopping mechanic. So okay, you move around, you position yourself, and then you have the combat. Then you have to decide to come out of it and run off if you want to get to a more advantageous position. And with the story in the world, you're also thinking, well, if we're having fixed camera angles, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually look at all the models Christine's making? So you're thinking like, okay, we could shift to first person to look at things. And then we're like, okay, but we wanted to have this staying still when we shoot. So can we do shooting in first person as well and kind of make use of the same viewpoint for that? Well, this is like that one discussion at the dining table. And then you were talking about hiding things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, okay, well, Lens of Truth, Ocarina of Time, they can show and hide things. So we kind of had this early idea for the third eye, that it would reveal things in the world.
Which then further lent to the story of like, okay, well, what if there's like this world of demons and angels? Then getting this third eye like sort of allows you to see these beings that Michelle as a human normally couldn't. And so that night, you know, we had these ideas, and we just thought, okay, let's just start with the very basic foundations, because we didn't know what we were doing. So Tom had to learning how to make the cameras like work, learning how to make the character actually be able to move appropriately, while I'm literally trying to learn how to use Blender. I mean, you know, it was hard, but like
it was really fun though. The early development was very enjoyable. We were learning so many new things.
Yeah, I think
just each little piece of the puzzle. So yeah, it was walking around with the cameras to begin with.
Yeah.
And quickly learning, okay, we can't have sudden harsh camera angle changes, because you'll walk out of a room, the camera will change, and then it'll make you walk back in, because your controls are in relation to the camera. And
yeah,
working out.
I'm glad that you've noticed that. That's one of my biggest bugbears with games, and so many games do that.
Yeah,
thank you.
we have levels of tolerance for it. So
yeah, we came up with like a whole system. So essentially, when we were when we were talking about the camera system and Tom like implemented the first version of it, he's like, okay, these parts feel really bad. So we were like, okay, if we're having fixed camera angles, we can't have more than, initially it was a 90-degree change, which we changed to a 45-degree change.
90 still feels a bit harsh.
Too bad, yeah.
We continue input when the camera changes. So if you're walking a direction, your stick will still move you in that direction until you let go and use it again. So the player's not really meant to be conscious of it, but it kind of keeps you
in relative position to where you believe you should be.
And because of the limited change in the angle, when you go to use it again, hopefully it doesn't feel like it's really changed at all. It's just like, okay, I want to move this way and I can move this way.
And then we came up with other kinds of cameras that allow for us to create dramatic changes depending on the room space. So if we have a camera that tracks the player, that means that we can shift what that angle would become.
Yeah, if we want to get you to a 90-degree rather than to 45-degree cameras, we can have a pivot so the camera will track you as you walk around the corner. Then we can switch to the next fixed angle that we want.
And also, it being a survival horror, we have lots of doors you go through.
Doors are very useful.
So every time there's a door, we can start
fresh. Can put the camera wherever we want it. Yeah.
So that was something very early on we were extremely conscious about, because we didn't want to necessarily put 10 controls in off the bat, just because that is something that is really difficult for people to get used to if they didn't ever play the initial Resident Evil and
we didn't want it as the default control scheme. 10 controls are an option in the game. You can turn it on.
But we just had to make sure that people felt we're making a game that has a nostalgic feel to it, but it's not. We're trying to sort of modernize it so that there's slightly less frustrations with certain things, because it comes back to that thing again of people don't have the time to sit and master the controls like they used to.
Well, there are kind of two crowds. There will be, hopefully we have a game that is enjoyable for people that played the old classic survival horror games.
Yeah.
But I think with your art, it's going to bring in a lot of people, and maybe it's their first ever horror game. And we want it to try and be as accessible as possible for people who've maybe not played that genre before. And having the more modern control scheme, I think, is a friendly intro to that.
Yeah.
That conversation in November 2020 sounds very productive and fruitful because you come up with all this from that. It is very evident that you've taken a lot of time to think about what the player is going to go through when they're playing through certain levels, when they're transitioning. And I think it's really helped that you two have such rich gaming histories, because it feels like you've been able to approach it from various angles. So while it's a survival horror in name, you've also got a lot of platforming, and you've got a lot of action when it comes to how the game is going to play and how the camera is going to affect everything and how controls are so important. And you've also thought about the new crowd and essentially a crowd who's grown up playing all these games and hasn't left. So appeasing those two markets is quite the juggling act, but it feels like you've done all the work and you put a lot of research and time into making sure you're given the best product possible, and that's really commendable.
Thank you. We're definitely trying.
We hope people enjoy it. I mean, it's our first game. We've tried to take it to be a product that is what we wanted to make, whilst also making it something that
other people can enjoy.
Yeah.
So we've spoken a lot about other games. We're going to talk about Sorry We're Closed. What is Sorry We're Closed? For someone who hasn't heard the game before, what is Sorry We're Closed?
Okay, so I have a couple of when we showed the trailer, I have a couple of quotes from people watching it that I think are apt. Silent Hill Sexual Tension Edition. Killer 7, but lesbians.
Oh yeah, Lesbian Killer 7.
Lesbian Killer 7. What else have we had? Because it's such a mesh of things, people end up doing this thing where it's they try to say it's like this and this. Games normally have their kind of sale line of it's this but this together. Yeah. But for ours, it ends up being it's like Resident Evil, but Silent Hill, but SMT, but also Catherine, but also Jet Set Radio, but also Killer 7.
It's nice that people see these things in it. But I mean, for us, it was a horror love adventure, is I think what I would call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, love is a big theme in the game for both the protagonist, Michelle, and the side characters. Mm-hmm. But it's not really
It's not like a dating sim.
Yeah, you don't
It's-
get to romance lots of people. You can insert and either help or interfere with other people's relationships.
Yeah. But I mean, there is kind of the option to, you know, sort of side eye the main antagonist and be like, well, maybe.
There are a few different endings people can
Yeah.
have, and it's about how you interact, and the side stories will give you more options for how the ending unfolds.
Yeah, so the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. But so if I were to like try and explain Sorry We're Closed to someone who's like never, like they've just seen the trailer and they don't really quite know what's going on. So Sorry We're Closed is a kind of yeah, like Tom said, it is a love story that's kind of like wrapped up in this horror setting, and it's got like some adventure elements to it. It's got some survivor horror elements to it. You play as a young woman, Michelle, and she's lonely. You know, she's coming from a bad breakup, and there is a demon out there who seeks out lonely people and tries to force them to fall in love with them, because they think that's just how it works. Like that's what they need in their life. So that's just what they're trying to do. And as the player Michelle, like you kind of learn more about this world that she's been like thrown into, and with that, she gets to kind of, like Tom said, mingle with other people's lives, and that mingling gives her a little bit more perspective as to what she could do with her situation. And but you know, at the same time, it's just us trying to have a good time, like with the kinds of characters that we got. You know, I like drawing sexy characters. and what that means as well for me, it's not like just like, you know, kind of bog standard, everyone looks the same. I think for me it's the case of I feel that there's so many different ways sexy can come off. So it's not that every character like has this standardized look to them. It's more that how can I take these particular traits and make that appealing to someone? And I hope that means that there's like a character in this game that's just for everyone. Like, you know, there's just so many different little bits of personalities that I'm hoping I've done well enough for people to appreciate. But yeah, so that's kind of what Sorry We're Closed is. It's I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to like toot my horn too much.
People are
This
responding
is
well
the
to the
time. This is honestly, you're sending something. You have to toot your own horn.
Yeah. I suppose so. It's a little bit of a wild time, right? And someone else had also, like, we've had a couple of things too with people playing it saying like, oh, it's like if Suda 51 made Silent Hill. And like I kind of see it, I kind of get it. It's that thing of, you know, it's got loud characters in it, and but it's also has that like kind of like grungy aesthetic of Silent Hill. But when we were making it, we weren't thinking at the time like, oh, how do we make a Suda 51 game? It was more, we just wanted to do what we wanted to do, and it started off like that. You know, we were just going to do it in our side, like as a side project.
It was the first 2 years really was like weekends and evenings. We were still working full-time jobs the first couple of years of development, and we were lucky to sign with our wonderful publisher Akupara Games, and they're helping us release what it is now.
Yeah, because what Sorry We're Closed used to be is also different from what it is now. When we were first starting it, and like our reveal trailer, like it's a little bit different from how the game has turned out now, because after having signing with the publisher, we were able to work on it for full time for 2 years, which meant that we could kind of, all the things that we thought, oh, we're not really going to have time to do, we were like, okay, we got a little bit more time, maybe we can, you know, reinsert that. And that was, I don't know if that was the best idea. We're paying for it now. But
there's a lot more, and I mean,
it's definitely a better game now because of it.
We didn't think our first game would be getting the reception it is from people, the kinds of interactions, the lovely comments from people, which hopefully we live up to with the full release. Yeah, but we thought, you know, we're going to carry on working this in the evenings, release it, you know, maybe we'll sell 100 copies, then we can try and do something bigger for the next one. So it's been quite a wild journey, I think, unexpected with where it's taken us.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of what Sorry We're Closed is like on the surface. And yeah, it's hard to really gauge what people are going to take out of it.
It's the game we dreamt up of what would we like to make as a game.
Yeah.
and that's ended up being with the support for us to
Yeah.
make it.
It's basically the game of, oh, I wish this existed when I was little. So for me, there's a lot of like queer elements in it as well, which I think, and I think I feel like, you know, just like a lot of different types of people in the game. Like for me, it feels like a nicely diverse cast, and it's not just because I'm like, oh, I want to make a diverse game. It's literally that was my life growing up, and that's just normal for me. Like having very different people was just totally normal. It's not like a gimmick or
Oh, you're
anything.
from New York
I'm from New
originally.
York, you know, like I'm from New York. My family is like my immediate family, especially, is very mixed. Like we had different fathers, so, and I always joke this with people, like, okay, my siblings, my mom used to like, she used to say we're like the rainbow because we literally like we're just different shades, and we got darker as well, like as she went through them. So my oldest brother is really pale with an afro. My second oldest brother is lighter than me, massive like facial hair everywhere. Then there's me. Then my younger brother, he's darker than me, and you know, he's just a black dude. And then he's just a black dude. And my sister,
Like that.
yeah, she's like, well, he's my little brother. But
Yeah.
He's just my little brother. And like, you know, and then my sister, she has blonde hair with blue eyes. Like,
Okay.
you see what I mean? Like,
that's interesting.
yeah. So,
but you said they get darker with each one. So,
well, this is why my mom called her Genesis. She was the reset button.
Okay.
She said, like, she like restarted the whole. So very, very different people, like even literally in my house all the time. So this idea that everyone is meant to be like the same or look the same or behave the same is just not something that is part of my reality. So I've got all these different characters, and also being like a queer person, being non-binary, and just I was like, you know, growing up, I wanted to see more than what was on or in the games or what was on TV. I wanted to see, I don't know, I just wanted something different, and I wanted something that was like kind of more flavorful. You know, I wanted flavor, so that's what I tried to put into Cyber Clothes. You know,
I hear that. I feel that very much so. Yeah, there's quite a lot. I mean, in terms of like, what was it? Silent Hill beats. What was it? All of your description.
Silent Hill Sexual Tension Edition.
Yeah. From that to, you know, obviously the diversity. There was quite a lot of interesting. I could make a whole paragraph of just like titles for this video from that answer alone. It sounds like you've got a really nice melting pot coming on. And when I saw the trailer, I was very impressed. I got that grungy feel that you mentioned when it looked like Silent Hill. It did feel very Silent Hill to me. I just naturally love that grungy vibe anyway. And I saw the coverage and all the attention you got off the trailer, which is always like a personal win for me, because I love it when like a personal game, like an independent game, gets that praise that they deserve, as opposed to an average game that's put out by a multi-million-dollar company that's, you know, a tax write-off. So like, I really appreciate that. And then when you mentioned like, you know, doing side eyes to the antagonist, personally, my mind went to Final Fantasy VII, because I know there's a lot of freak gamers out there. You are freaks, and they're gonna make something happen with Cloud and Sephiroth in that same scenario. So like, I think people are gonna have a lot of fun with your game.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, I was one of them little freaks. That was me. I was
like, gamer.
I was the little freak that was like, they should kiss. They should be making out in the middle of the flames. Aerith needed to die so they could love each other. All right.
Oh no.
That was me. I was there right in the fan fiction. All right. I said, you know what? If Square Enix ain't gonna make him kiss, I will. All right.
I don't think I've heard anyone go, Aerith deserved to die.
I mean,
and for such a reason as well.
She was getting in the way. No, I mean, you know, I did have like a single tear, and I was like, okay, what? No.
That tear was fake, and you know it.
Oh god, I still need to play the remakes. But But it is a little bit of that though. You're kind of like actually hitting the head on the nail there, where it's like where that just kind of felt like there was something there, but it wasn't really there for us. We had to kind of insert it ourselves.
Yeah.
It's just nice being able to have the tools to kind of make something where I'm like, okay, I can make that happen. I can make that a reality. And I think and I hope there's going to be people who enjoy that aspect of it, who, want to go after the villain in that kind of way and be like, but what if,
I think that's exactly what I'm thinking when it comes to like a lot of gamers. They just want different things with their experience and their time, and it's okay to have that ending. It's okay to have that, because the magical thing about gaming is something that you mentioned right at the start of this episode. It's an interactive story, and by that you can directly manipulate how the story goes through your actions. And I think that's fine. I do love that there's a lot of people being sure of themselves in this day and age, and they wanting to see whether it's themselves or they wanting to see alternate stories take place, and I think that's fine. It's your game, it's your story to do with as you wish, and I don't think that when you relate that to diversity and your difference and all of that, we are in a weird age where a lot of insecure gamers are feeling threatened by that. And I think you just need to look at the array of games that we have right now. And not every game is going to be centered around, a white straight male. And that's okay, because that game's coming out next week,
Exactly.
So, I'm seeing a lot of people using work. This is a bugbear, and I don't want to turn this into a rant. But I don't know, ever since 2020, I'm seeing a lot of people using woke and BLM and all of this stuff as, code for insults, and just saying, oh, not white. I'm not gonna. I'm the boycott, even though a lot of these things are factually accurate to some extent.
I
don't want to take too much attention away from your game, but when you look at other stuff like Assassin's Creed Shadows, people are crapping on it without even doing the research. Like a cursory Wikipedia Google search will tell you, Yasuke was a real person. If you don't like it, that's fine, don't buy it. But to then put so much harassment and hate on the developers and the publishers and people, this is people's jobs that they're putting their years into, and just because it's not the guy from Neo, they're crapping on it. We need diversity. I love it. I love the fact that I'm going to be able to play someone that doesn't look like me and doesn't look like every protagonist since the 1990s. We need difference, and I love that about this game. It just looks really different.
Thank you. And it is that thing of like, it's just fun to be able to experience. I think that's what pulled me to games in the first place, is like that experience of a life that isn't yours, and you kind of get that like kind of compacted, and it almost becomes part of your own personal life experience. Like, when I'm playing Grandia, I'm not some 13-year-old redheaded boy who lives in like the Steam engine era of Europe. Like, that wasn't me, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and like all the different people he got to meet. And I think that's just what it's about for me. Like, that's the whole purpose of reading or getting into a story or a world that isn't your own. It's not your own, So I think and it just seems like a lot of people are enjoying what we're making as well, as like kind of weird and wonderful as it is. So I just hope that we can deliver on what the vision was meant to, like what the vision is.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying before, it's the world you've grown up in. It's not like there was not like an objective, like, oh, how many different types of people can we put in this? It's we've got a team of 2, one artist. It's your characters, your worlds that you've created. I think it's very authentic from you and your experiences. And if people don't like that, there are a lot of other games available, and I hope you enjoy them.
Basically.
I hear COD's coming out in a couple of weeks. You'll be fine.
Basically. And I think that's the other thing too. Like, I know that also because there's so many games coming out, it feels like we're kind of scrunched for time, but there is also the other side of it too. Like, I feel I'm the type of person that feels like there's not really too many, right? Like, it's like books. There are so many books, but we shouldn't discourage people from writing new ones. And I'm not going to ever be able to read every book in the world. That's not possible. I was never like, that was never an idea that anyone ever had.
Well, that's quite the change recently. Because
Yeah.
when I was little, I would like look at the releases each week. I would know like every single game coming out. And now it feels like there's more every day than there used to be in like a month.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
yeah, but it means that people can find their games.
Yeah.
There is something for everyone.
Yeah, and I
more
think
so than there's ever been.
And for me and Tom, it's like the case too of like, we want Star Wars Close to be we want it to be successful enough for us to do the next thing. Like, I don't need it to be like this huge super. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I'm not saying, buy the game, but
buy the game. I'm saying buy the game.
Buy the game. But at the same time, I'm not going to be disappointed, like, if we're not like the next huge, massive, big indie darling. Like, I just want it to mean that we can survive for the next one and
we'd
just
like
be
to be able
comfortable.
to make another game.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. Yeah. We don't know what happens when it's going to go off there.
Yeah. Just send it off into the world and
yeah.
Goodbye, little baby.
We don't have to answer this too much right now, but what would be next? Do you have any like early concepts or ideas of what the next game would be? If it's not very too much,
it's not a sequel.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a sequel.
I would say if people like the art for Star Wars Closed, keep watching what we're doing. We have our artist.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, so
that'd be crazy.
If I can be really vague, I would just say it's going to that thing of where I was saying before, like, oh, a big, grand, wonderful adventure. That kind of feeling of otherworldness. I think that's kind of the next direction we're going for. But beyond that, we can't say much because firstly, we're so early in development that so much can change. Like, it just changes so rapidly. But I think our hearts
we have an idea of what, if we're able to do it, we know what we'd like to make next.
Yeah, and then we'll be back on here. We'll be talking about the next one with
let's go. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Few more questions for each of you. What was a difficulty that you encountered while building this game, and how did you overcome that? And what is one thing you're very proud of yourself over the course of building this game?
That's a good question. See, I like that. I like that kind of question. Okay. Difficulty for me is the writing. I had some experience writing comics, and there is an overlap of like how you write for comics and you write for games, which is you have a lot of visuals. You have a small area where you have to write the text. It's not in prose. You're basically only writing dialogue when it comes to telling the story usually. There can be other elements too, like, but with a character-driven game like this. So those are the overlaps, but the difficulty was making a multiple ending game. And I thought that the sort of structure that I created was going to make it easier for myself, but I think I actually made it much, much harder.
The more choices, the more variables, and like as the game progresses, they diverge further from each other.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, whereas we would have had one line if it's a linear story, we've now got, okay, one of 6 possible things could be happening now, something like that. And
it's the thing too of where you are like manipulating some characters and their behavior. It's like, well, what if you start like kind of changing your mind partway through? How does that character change their mind with you? And it sounds like it's natural and not suddenly like, oh, well, you said this now, so okay, I guess I agree, like immediately.
Yeah.
So that was probably the most difficult aspect of this game. And I mean, gosh, the amount of typing, I don't think I've ever written so much in my entire life that I have done in like the last few months. Then another difficulty too was kind of trying to get the levels shaped correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, with it being a fixed camera angle, sometimes I'll be building a level and forget or haven't decided where the camera's meant to be yet. So the room looks really cool while I'm like sort of moving around in it. And
your favorite trick, let's put lots of cool pipes on the ceiling, and then like I import it, I'm like, that's right in front of the camera.
yeah, and it's like, okay, just disable those. So those are probably some of the things. In terms of production wise, though, another difficulty like that just sort of didn't even account for. So this is for anyone who's thinking of making a game, haven't done it before. The time it takes to market the game properly, and if you're doing things like events, finding events to sign it up to, making sure that you have all the materials that you need. Every time
replying to emails. Sorry to everyone who's emailed.
Yeah.
I open it, I see the number, and then I close it. I'm sorry.
It's hard. But also, like, every time you want to be part of a showcase, they usually want something unique. So it's like, okay, you might want to sign up to all of these different events, but do you have the time to make a trailer again, that's showing kind of similar stuff, but in a different way?
Yeah.
So those are some of the kind of things that sort of blindsided me a little bit.
Yeah, the periphery, there is a lot going on, and I feel, hopefully in the future we will pace ourselves better with having time set aside for those things.
We learned a lot.
Yeah. Difficulties, I guess early on it was the what do we call it? The matrix of opportunity.
The matrix of possibility.
Yeah. Which was, okay, we can be in first person, third person, in dialogue, not in dialogue. The eye can be open, the eye can be closed. And any one combination of those states can be happening. Or we could, do we have the weapon out or not? Are we in a combat level or not? And it's like managing the state that everything can be in so the correct thing happens when you press the interact button was challenging. And it's working now.
I can't even believe it. Well, I was going to say, like, the thing I can't believe I hadn't mentioned was deciding to do 2 worlds. Like,
oh yeah,
I don't never again. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought it was going to be cool, but what this meant that every single level, like, I had to have 2 versions of it now. So the amount of like design work that had to go into it, the next game, I can confidently say
there's no third eye in the next game.
There is no third eye in the next game. There is no secret world.
I'll tell you that's a Streamcast exclusive. You've heard it here first.
I think, okay, so something I am proud of, though, is I am also kind of proud of the story because, like, I tried my best, and I feel like we've had people playing it and just seeing their reactions to the stuff, like, oh, they're actually laughing at my jokes. Oh, that's nice, right? And I think also being able to make the characters that I want to make and the antagonists, I feel that is a character, like, I've done work for like other people before, and even to kind of touch lightly the subject you were saying earlier, even in this world of like where people think that, oh, companies are just like ticking diversity boxes. When I did work for other companies, there'd be many instances where I would sort of suggest something and they'd want to alter it or change it to follow the trends, so to speak. So even still, these things happen where designs and concepts get watered down so that they can more fit like, some sort of aesthetic that some company wants.
There are various players, like you have the people running the company, there's investors. Exactly. There's all sorts of people who can have influence over things.
So even when I had at those other companies people like within the team who would be absolutely in love with what I did, there would be external factors for them who are like, oh, but this other game has a character that looks like this. Why don't we make them look like this other character?
So I guess that's been the freedom of it just being us making the game.
Yeah.
You haven't had those restrictions.
Yeah, and Akupara as a publisher has also been very good in that respect, where they've allowed us to have that creative control. There's not really, they don't butt in and say, well, what if the character looked like this instead? So the antagonist for me is like, I think if I tried to make like this like tall black person with like abs and a unibrow who is just hot and sexy, and people are like, I want to date this person, I don't think I would have been able to do that with like a lot of like with other games. I think the first thing they would have done is shaved the eyebrow, like the unibrow right down the middle
Can
of
you
it.
imagine the meetings about the unibrow?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, can we talk about the unibrow?
So the unibrow is probably one of my most like my favorite feats of design. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy. What about you? What are you happy about, Tom?
Yes. Oh,
What am I happy about? I think the play mechanics. When we settled on like because the third eye used to change the whole thing, everything. There wasn't a radius, like a physical size to it before, and we were struggling because like, okay, this is like early in development. We're like, okay, it just changes it instantly, but there's not a lot we can do with play because it's either on or off. When we had the idea to make it a capsule, a 3D space around the player, it really opened up other ideas. Like, okay, we can now, it can hit things around us. So you can hit the enemy with it and it can stun the enemy. It can reveal things locally to you. It can constrain combat because when it's open, you can't shoot out of it. So the space of it really allowed many other play functionalities
Well, and yeah, because
to happen.
when we first designed it, you used to not be able to shoot with the third eye open at all. It used to either be you can shoot things or you can use your third eye. But then when we created this radius around it, it was all of a sudden we had this thing of like, well, we have like a kind of risk reward element to it
changes
now.
the environments. Can it change the enemies? Then we got the weak points of the enemies when they're inside the vision. And having the radius of the vision changed the game very much for the better.
Yeah. And you got some good dialogue in the game, I would say. Anyway, that to me is a feat. There are certain parts, like in the demo, there's Jenny, the woman who screams, like she eats the money and she screams like maximize profits. That was Tom's idea.
Oh yeah, the eating was from
Tom. Like that was Tom's idea. So like I knew that I wanted to have like this woman who was like manic about money, and Tom was like, but what if she just like kills someone and eats the money and runs away? And I was like, all right, I'm taking notes. So you know.
Tom just nodding there. Yeah, that was me. Yeah. Great idea.
It was a good idea. So there are I think bits of Tom that kind of shone through in the story that really kind of changed how I was going to tell the story, because initially I was going to play it a little bit more straight and be a little bit more serious. But after having done that, and like
it's not a very serious horror game.
No,
it's more like Scooby-Doo horror. Sorry, hardcore horror fans.
It's got some gore and stuff in it, right? You know, it's got like the gross aspects to it, like people being like ripped apart and stuff. But at the same time, it's like you'll see the characters. There's like the Daryl character. He's so stupid. Like he's hot and shirtless, but man, he has not got a thought in his mind. So, you know, it's just that combination of things. That's what I'm proud of.
Yeah. It sounds well balanced. You got the serious with the gore and the violence, and then you also have the lightheartedness. You got the guy who spent more hours in the gym than in the library. It sounds really good. Like you got a lot of 3D characters there. So I am very excited for Sorry We're Closed to hit the markets. Final question. When can we expect this game to be out, and on which platforms?
November 14th on PC. So it will be on the usual suspects, Steam, and there's the Humble Games Store. Steam is a good place to find the game.
Buy it on Steam. And you know, if this comes out, if this interview is out before you can buy it, wish list it, because the wish list button is like, you know, the mistress with the whip. She has the power to like make this game a success. So if you want to see weirdo games like ours, and want to see more of that and encourage, you know, like a bigger variety of games, the wishlist button is the way to do it.
If you like the look of the game, please consider supporting us. So we can bring you more in the future, because everything really depends on how this does
to
whether we get to make a new game.
No pressure. So November 14th. We have a Twitter. I ain't ever calling it X. We got a Twitter.
No one does. It's fine. It's Twitter.
It's just Twitter.
It's Twitter.
So we got a Twitter, which is Alamode Games. That's kind of like the main one we're active on, really, just because literally with the amount of time, we ain't got time to update other stuff. We did make a Blue Sky as well. I don't post on there as much. I will start though. And that's just Alamode Games as well. And yeah, on Steam on November the 14th. And yeah, I ain't got a lot of time left, do we, Tom?
No, it's definitely ready to release. No, we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
It'll
But yes.
be amazing. Yes. So you've heard it here. 14th of November, a great day, of course, for many reasons. But one was Sorry We're Closed is going to be launching on that day on Steam. So make sure you wishlist it now, buy it on the 14th of November, and support these great creators. And fund the next game that they're gonna make, because we want to see the next one. Right. Before I get ahead of myself, Sorry We're Closed is the game of topic. Alamode, thank you so much, CB and Tom, for joining me. Is there anywhere else, any other way that viewers and listeners can support you?
Leaving a review if you like the game.
Yeah.
Steam's algorithm really seems to like that.
Yeah.
So
reviews
if
when
you
Adventure
enjoy
comes
it,
out.
please give us a review. That helps massively in the first few days after release.
Oh, and my personal favorite. I keep telling people I want fan art, all right? Like, I know the game ain't out yet, but just give me, or fan fiction. Fan fiction would be the holy grail for me. You're just like, that's what I'm here for. This is why.
I feel like I know you so well. I know exactly what you're looking for. Well.
So if you want to support us, but no, seriously, reviews, following us on Twitter. You can also follow us on Steam as well, because if we put like updates and stuff or stuff on the forum, that comes up there. And just spreading the word,
tell your friends if you think they would like it.
We hope there's a little bit of something in there for everyone. That's the main way of supporting it. And thank you so much for having us on here as well. Like, it's been a blast. It's been really, really fun having the chat. You've made us laugh a lot. I really enjoyed our time on here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'll make sure to make that payment in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you. Oh, good. Don't worry, I'll cut that one in post. It's cool. So I've thoroughly enjoyed having you both on and having this great conversation. So thank you so much for the time, for saying yes, and being you, shouting out your game. So if you are watching and or listening, please make sure to follow Alamode Games on Twitter and follow them on Steam. Wishlist Sorry We're Closed, and buy it, review it, leave the positive, the thumbs up.
Yeah,
do
just
all that stuff.
Only thumbs up.
Yeah.
Just only thumbs up.
Because Steam's algorithm sounds a bit like YouTube's, which you could help us out with by liking this video, leaving a comment. If you have any questions that I haven't asked that you would like to know from these two, please leave that in the YouTube or Spotify, wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and maybe I'll contact them to answer your questions.
But, we wouldn't mind. We wouldn't mind at all.
Of course. There are tons of other ways you can support us as well, and those will all be in the description. But until next time, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the next Streamcast.
Bye.